everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the VUU. We are the weekly podcast, viewcast, Facebook, YouTube, you name it, you can get us, episode of the webcast for the Church of the Larger Fellowship. And we're so excited today to be talking with you about vaccinating against racism in the healthcare system. So before we get to that, we will have our co-hosts introduce themselves. I'm Christina Rivera. I'm coming to you from beautiful Augusta County, Virginia. We've had snow. It's melting, which is awesome, except it makes it really muddy, and but it's just really beautiful. And it's this kind of nice cold, but not ridiculous, freeze your hiney off if you go out. Your nalgas just like kind of tighten up, kind of cold. So that's me. Quiana, how you doing?
I am well. I have to go change my name. I'm going to do that right now because I've learned how to multitask. So my name is QuianaDenae. I'm here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It's been cold, y'all, but it's not been, it's definitely, you got to have your layers on, like don't fool yourself. But it's not so cold you can't go outside. There's a difference between layering outside and can't go. We were spared the snowstorm, so we have no snow on the ground. But there's supposed to be some that comes tonight, and that didn't say an amount, so it just seems like things will fall out of the sky. It's not like digging for no, it's like there'll be snow. So that's kind of encouraging, and doing pretty good. Not gonna lie, just did my cookie mom duties, so now I'm ready for my kid to sell lots of cookies, and I have to say I'm kind of excited because I'm not delivering anything. Everything is getting mailed. I just have to keep posting about it, which is a relief because in past Cookie Mom years, my car has become the cookie wagon and I've driven between here and all high heaven to get cookies to people. So maybe that's a blessing of the COVIDs. So having said that, I'm going to pass the floor to my friend, Reverend Dr. Michael Tino.
Thank you, QuianaDenae. And if you want to share cookie ordering links with your fellow hosts, we would probably order some cookies from your darling child.
I'm shameless. I will do this. Don't worry.
And my darling child is over here. Yes, dear. So Michael Tino here in Peekskill, New York, a little bit north of New York City, where we got 2 feet of snow this week. And y'all, I have lived in this general area for all but 15 years of my life, and 2 feet of snow has happened like maybe 3 or 4 times in my life. In once, I mean, like 6 inches and then 6 more inches and then 6 more inches, but 2 feet of snow in a day is not our usual MO, and there's a lot of snow out there. There's a lot of snow. I'm trying not to use choice language about the snow. It is all good. But we're safe in the house and there's heat, and we are fortunate to have jobs that help us pay our bills, and groceries that can be delivered, and all sorts of things that I do not for a second take for granted. We're okay here, and elementary school is happening in the next room. It's okay. There were 2 snow days from virtual school this week. I have feelings about that. That'll be a different VUU episode. Mm-hmm. Aisha Hauser, how are you out there in Seattle?
Hello, I'm Aisha Hauser. I'm in Seattle, Washington, where it's winter in Seattle. It rains every few years. We get snowmageddon, and here in Seattle, that's anything like close to 4 inches. I can't even say it with a straight face. So I used to live in North Dakota. For a year, I lived in North Dakota, and it was the first time that I experienced cold that you couldn't go outside. To your point, QuianaDenae. And what the fascinating thing, other than air you couldn't breathe because it was so cold, is in October it would hit 30, and everyone would start with the layers. When it hit 30 in like March, people were in shorts. It's like, oh, it's balmy. Like that's how cold it got, right? I don't miss that at all. Not even a little bit. And I don't miss 2 feet of snow. I also lived in New Hampshire. I've lived in a lot of states. where I felt like, I don't even know, as an Alaskan wilderness person, I learned to use a snowblower because you're not shoveling 2 feet of snow. I mean, you could shovel 2 feet of snow, but we got it so often in New Hampshire that I learned to use a snowblower and did not lose fingers. So I'm very grateful for that. I don't take that for granted because it's a thing that could have happened. Because snowblowers are scary things. So.
But you grew up in Jersey, right? So how often did you get 2 feet of snow all at once in New Jersey?
Not often at all. But remember the early
1979,
90s?
1993?
Yeah, exactly. 93.
I remember. Name the years.
You know why? Because it was the first year I was married, and we were stuck in the house, in the apartment, because we were in a studio. That was fun. So that was me. Okay, are we doing UU roundup? I can keep going on. UU roundup. Otherwise,
we probably should introduce Tanner Linden, who
Tanner,
outreach manager behind the chalice.
Tanner Linden. How are you?
Hi, I'm Tanner. I am the tech for the VUU, and I will be behind the scenes taking your comments from YouTube over to Zoom so the hosts can reply to them. And I will pass it back to Chris.
Thanks, Tanner. And, also a thank you for all the folks that regularly watch The View. We love you. We love your comments. Please feel free to comment. We can't always reply to every one of them, but we try to because we're just really excited to be in community with you all. So, so at the beginning of The View, we usually have the UU roundup. So just kind of interesting things that have gone on in Unitarian Universalist world circles in the past week. And Aisha, what do you have for us?
So Nicole Presley, who led the UU the Vote effort over the election season, has now been hired as she's part of the organizing strategy team as the field and programs director. So my understanding is, I think the previous position was time limited, but this is field and programs director. Nicole Presley with the UUA is permanent with UU the Vote. So this is awesome. I think that's what she's going to be doing. Yes, she will be field and programs director at the UUA's organizing strategy team. So yay, Nicole, friend of the show. We're so excited for you. We're so excited for Unitarian Universalism. So shout out to Nicole Presley. Very, very exciting news.
I just wanted to highlight that Black Lives VUU has announced the Blue Northside Housing Cooperative Initiative. It's a Blue initiative that embodies their commitment to improving the material conditions of Black lives as an act of our faith. I'm so excited that they finally got to announce this. So this is going to provide a path to home ownership for Black and Indigenous families in the North Minneapolis community. It is some multi-lots units and multi-unit housing that is going to be developed in North Minneapolis, and the ability, to create generational wealth for Black and Indigenous families is something that we've been systematically locked out of in many ways. And so this is just a beautiful expression of our Unitarian Universalist faith. And I'm so excited. If you need more information, just check out Blue. It's on their Facebook page. And I'm just so thrilled for them. For all of us. Anybody else?
I think this is a good as any place to let folks know that CLF, the Church of the Larger Fellowship, has started advertising for next year's Learning Fellow positions. We are looking to hire 2 or 3 fantastic religious professionals to serve a 2-year term as Learning Fellows with us to do things like online worship and pastoral care and community building. And if we have in the past put this out there as a ministerial internship opportunity, but we just want it to be really clear that you do not have to be on the ordained ministry fellowship track to be a CLF Learning Fellow. You have to be dedicated to Unitarian Universalism and wanting to learn new and innovative things and to innovate with us. So Tanner will give you an email address in the chat to if you're interested and you need me to send you the job description. But applications are due in March, and we're really excited. I'm really excited. This is my first time hiring learning fellows. I will not speak for anyone else but me. I will use I statements. This is my first time hiring learning fellows, and I am super excited.
And the rest of the lead ministry team of the Church of the Larger Fellowship echoes that excitement. We're very, very excited. The learning fellow process that Meg Riley created, and there is actually a fellowship at the fellowship fund at the Church of the Larger Fellowship to support upcoming learning fellows, has just been such a treat. It's been just a wonderful way to get to know up and coming people in Unitarian Universalist leadership, but also just having new faces challenges us. Like, it challenges us to think about the ways that we've always done things and whether or not those ways are, why those ways are there. Let's just put it that way. And might there be other ways to do those things? So I've really enjoyed getting to know our current learning fellows.
And also, just to clarify, and I'm excited too, yes, and Meg had learning fellows, a few that weren't in the ministerial formation path. Right. So there have been religious educators, I believe maybe community ministers who weren't in the ordination process who were learning fellows. So it's really a just exciting tradition that we are continuing. And I'm with you both, very excited about this process.
Yeah, and it's just that it's been advertised on the UUA Ministerial Internship Clearinghouse, and we're going to work on getting the job description more widely out there for folks who don't go on the Ministerial Internship Clearinghouse regularly.
Shocking. Anything else for our roundup? No? Okay. So today we're going to talk about, we came up with the name Vaccinating Against Racism in Healthcare, and we wanted to talk about the COVID vaccine and basically what's going on in our communities around the COVID vaccine. And one of the reasons, full disclosure, is I had a really terrible experience trying to get the vaccine in my local area. I wrote about it, and we're going to put the link to my blog piece in there. But I'll give you kind of a quick synopsis of this. I had filled out the online form that the Department of Health had put out for people who are employed in the area, but not employed by an employer in the area. So Church of the Larger Fellowship is based out of Boston. I'm not going to go to Boston for my vaccine. Obviously, I'm in Virginia. So I filled out the application with the local Department of Health and said, here's what I do for a living. Here's my age. Here's my race. Here's, all of that information. And I got back an email inviting me to get the vaccine at a local hospital, Centara Rockingham Memorial Hospital. So I made an appointment. They send you a little link. So I filled out the link. Again, I identified myself, what I do, all that kind of thing. They sent me the confirmation of my appointment. So I'm very excited about getting the vaccine. I'm driving up to Centara Hospital, and I'm sitting in the parking lot. And I got there early, of course. I'm just so excited about this. And I'm thinking, I'm making notes because I got there early. I'm thinking about the ways in which Black and Brown communities are going to need specific advocacy to be able to get into this program. So because I had all the tools necessary to be able to sign up for it, I knew that it was available. I knew the Department of Health website. I had internet access. I got, a text confirmation, all of these things that I have privilege. I've got English as my first language, all of these things. So I'm making notes, and I get a text that says, are you on your way for your vaccine appointment? Just making sure that, you're coming for your vaccine appointment. And I was like, oh, great. I'm just going to go in, even though I'm early. So I go inside, and the woman in front of me in line is checking in at the desk, and she laughs to the white woman who's checking everybody in. She's like, oh, I'm early for my appointment. And the white woman checking her in, takes her name, checks her name off, and it's like, oh, don't worry, everybody's been early. It's been great, and waves her into the vaccine clinic. And I come up and I give my name, and I'm kind of laughing. I said, I too am early. I'm like 20 minutes early for my appointment. And she takes my name and, checks it off the list, and then looks at me and says, are you an RMH employee, a Centara RMH hospital employee? I said, I'm not. I'm clergy, and I had my CLF ID badge, which it had said to bring. So I brought that, showed that to her, and she said, oh, no, we're not vaccinating you clergy yet. And I said, well, I got this invitation, I got this confirmation, maybe there's some misunderstanding. And she said, no, we're not vaccinating clergy yet. And I said, well, what should I do? Like, who should I call to figure out what's going on? And she said, well, call the Department of Health. So I called the Department of Health. They said, no, you've got the confirmation. Just show them the confirmation email. So I go back to her and show her the confirmation email. And she said, no, that email got sent out by mistake. So we can't vaccinate you because that email got sent out by mistake. And I said, okay, well, what should I do? And she says, well, you can call the person who sent you the email. And I said, okay, it's a Centara employee. Do you have her number? And she said, no, can you just Google it, please? And I was like, okay, sure. I'm going to go sit just kind of down the hall by the cafe and Google it. So I Googled it. I called the woman's office. They said she's not available right now, but we'll be here for about another hour. We'll either get back to you within that hour, or we might not get back to you until Monday. And I said, okay, whatever. It'd be easier if you got back to me today because I'm already here and my name's already on the list. But, I've driven 40 minutes to get here. So anyway, so I'm waiting there for a call back, and security officer walks up. And then another security walks up and joins him. And he says, is there a problem, ma'am? And I said, I'm not sure. Do you need a clergy person? Like, I was in the mode of, like, maybe they need my help for something. Maybe they need to de-escalate a situation and they need my assistance. And little did I know I'm the situation that they need to de-escalate. And they said, no, we've been told that you've refused to leave. And I said, nobody's asked me to leave. So I'm not certain how I could refuse to leave when nobody has asked me to leave. But so I show him my appointment. I show him my confirmation. I said, you're welcome to go check with the women, at the desk, and they can confirm for you that I have an appointment. There's just some confusion. And so he goes to check and comes back. And in the meantime, when they said, he comes back and says, well, they're saying that they're not going to be able to give you the vaccine today and that you've refused to leave. I said, you know what? I think I need to start recording this interaction. So, I give fair notice that I'm about to record this. And his partner goes ballistic. And she's like, if she's going to record, don't say another word, call for police, call for backup, don't say anything else. And luckily, this officer didn't escalate it to that point. Went back, tried to clarify that I was on the list, came back and said, we understand that you're on the list, but they're saying that you're not going to get the vaccine today. So I said, fine. I walked with them back over to the desk and I said, I just want to have it on record that I'm on the list to get the vaccine, but you are refusing to vaccinate me. And she said, yes, you're on the list to get the vaccine, but you did not pass the additional screening. And I said, okay, I will go ahead and leave. And so that's like a microcosm of what it's like to try and advocate for your health as a Latina woman in the white U.S. healthcare system. It was clearly an error had been made. It wasn't my error. I went through all of the process correctly, but there was no accountability for the fact that an error had been made. And I get that errors get made. Then have a system that says, oh, you know what? We know that that email went out to a bunch of people it shouldn't have gone out to. Here's how to get back into the system to get an appointment. We're really sorry that that happened. Here's a little slip of paper so that you know what to do in order to get yourself back into the system. But no, it was me advocating for my health that somehow for this white woman became an issue of control and power and fear.
Chris, before you, I want you to take a big breath. What you just shared to me is rather intense and traumatizing and triggering. And I just want you to have space to know that what you experienced is not okay, and that you have the space, the right to respond to that in all the ways. So if that includes grieving or crying or anger, that you have that space with us, you have that space with me. And I hope that you were surrounded by the love of this community in the face of such brutal treatment. And,
thank you.
And for folks listening, it may not sound brutal, but when you are sitting in a hospital, which is supposed to be a safe place, and two officers of any kind walk up to you, your flight or fight kicks in. There is nothing that's part of being brown, is seeing an officer with a gun, even if you're at a hospital, is alarming, and it changes how you respond, who you are, and how you move in the world, because you don't want to die in the same place where you also go to help other people die when you're a pastor, right? Right. So just all of those layers come in there, y'all. Just know that there's just layers upon layers in which we are conditioned and triggered for our own survival to move and to perceive how things are moving around us so that we can survive. So even if Chris isn't explicitly naming those things, know that they are happening, that they happen for her.
Yeah. And it took all weekend to process the adrenaline crash. I was really depressed and withdrawn this weekend. I had the support of my family, my husband, but it was hard. And not surprisingly, 2 days ago, my back completely locked up. And I'm actually sitting here right now with a vibrating, warming back pad. And this is the first vertical I've been since my back locked up. And I think that people don't understand that having a cultural competency, like of knowing who your population is that you're trying to serve as a healthcare professional, should be one of the highest priorities that we have for people who are serving our communities. Because to call security on a Black or brown person is not the same thing as calling it on our white counterparts. And it should not be your first line, quote unquote, of defense. Like, I'm a perfectly reasonable person. And even if I wasn't, even if I was acting out in that moment, that person who was there, who was supposed to be serving the community, should have a cultural competency to know how to do that job without calling 3 members of security to escort me out.
I love how in the story, each time it was like, why can't you get your shot? She had a different reason.
Yeah.
Every time. So to me, that's like, if you know your truth, you say it over and over. This person, you said your truth. I have an appointment. I did what I was supposed to do. And her truth kept changing, which is to me like a yellow flag on the field. Go ahead, Michael. I'm sorry.
Well, and this particular incident, we witness your experience, Chris, and name it as inappropriate and completely unacceptable. And part of the reason why you bring this here today, and the reason why we're talking about it on The View, is that this is not Chris didn't get a vaccine or Chris was treated inappropriately at a hospital. It is this is symptom of a systemic problem in our country, and given that Black and brown people are disproportionately dying as a result of this COVID pandemic, the fact that they are also disproportionately being shut out of vaccination is like doubly infuriating. It is doubly astounding, and it is not surprising because it's the white supremacist culture we live in.
It's the gatekeeping too that's galling, is that you, every step of the way, which is what happens also over and over with Black and brown peoples, when there's a white woman, white man, white person who can gatekeep against caring for and following through, that happens often. And so it is, what's also happening, I'm in Washington State here, is migrant workers, which are not all, obviously, they're all over the country. There's a friend of mine is trying to advocate to get the migrant workers to be part of the first group to be vaccinated. And it's not that, I mean, there's resistance, but there's also not even the acknowledgement that that has to happen. Like, people are still in the fields picking our food that we're still paying 99 cents for, whatever, like cheap labor. And, my friend is saying, hey, we have to vaccinate migrant workers. We have to vaccinate the people in the field who are primarily from South and Central America. And just, it's so galling, beyond galling and upsetting. And one of the things that I was saying earlier, or before we came on air, I'm in Seattle, where a freezer broke. Because that's the other thing too, is the accessibility of these two vaccines that have to be kept at like sub-zero temperatures, right? So the freezers broke. Thankfully, these nurses were like, let's put the call out. And I don't know, they had 1,600 doses, and at like 11 o'clock at night, people went to Seattle, the center of Seattle, to get vaccinated, and they did it. And so thankfully, these people did do that. They said, let's just get the vaccines out. But that's been happening too. So do we start wishing that freezers start breaking so more people get vaccinated quickly? It's the whole rollout is a mess. We know why. And it doesn't need to be. It does not need to be this terrible, and it doesn't need to be continuing to be racist and terrible. But this is a system we're in, right?
Yeah, and I think naming it is one of the reasons why we're talking about it, because this isn't just happening. It's not just a bad apple in a barrel. It's not. It's the same thing that we see with police brutality. This is a systemic coming for Black and brown lives because our lives are deemed less valuable. And our lives are the lives that are expendable in this white supremacy culture of the United States. And if we don't say that, if we don't say it to the exact thing that it is, if we call it disparate health outcomes, if we say that there's a larger, percentage population in prison industrial complex than should be according to the population of the United States, if we don't say that this country is coming for the lives of Black and brown people, it doesn't get to people. People don't understand that this doesn't just happen by mistake. It doesn't just happen because there's a few bad actors in the system. This system is set up to make this population of people within our communities dispensable. And that gets shown over and over. We have a graphic. Tanner's going to put up the graphic that talks about who is getting vaccinated in the rollout. The most recent vaccine rollout is showing exactly who is getting vaccinated. And I'm going to read it off for the folks that are just listening. So the COVID vaccines by race through January 14th, over 60% are white. And white women over the age of 50 accounted for the majority of the first vaccinations. I'm going to say that again. White women over the age of 50 accounted for the vast majority of the first vaccinations. The Latino population, 11%. I'll remind people that we're 17% of the general population. The Black population, 5%. I'll remind people that Black folks are 15% of our population. Native American, American Indians, Alaskan Natives, 2%. Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders, 0.3%, and Asian, 6%. This isn't a mistake. This is a rollout that is happening exactly the way it was supposed to. And it is protecting exactly the people that it was intended to protect. And so we have to be, and thanks for the graphic, Tanner, we have to be asking ourselves as people of faith, what are we doing to counteract that process? Because it's not just about me and whether or not I'm going to get my vaccine. I have no idea if I'm going to get my vaccine because now the Department of Health thinks that I have my vaccine. They sent over a list of people to Centara and said, okay, you vaccinate these people. And now they think that I'm in the pipeline to get vaccinated. So I have no idea how to get back into the pipeline to get vaccinated. To this day, I wrote to the head of the hospital. I wrote to the Department of Health. It's been on Facebook. It's been covered by the news. No idea. So,
and then you add, so Chris, you are in a place where, okay, so now imagine you're still trying to work from home. Imagine if you had younger kids and you were trying to crisis school them from home.
Right.
You're trying to buy groceries and manage your life. And now you're dealing with this vaccine stuff. And I think a lot of times I think they anticipate this, to be honest with you, anticipate Black and brown folks being so tired, so overwhelmed, fighting so many other systems that they just tap out and say, I don't have time to deal with this. My kid needs to go to crisis school. They're failing. They have the potential to, like all of these other things are falling down. So you just tap out of the thing that's, the most stressful. And I think they anticipate that, which is really kind of gross, that we've just gotten folks so tired and so worn down from trying to navigate systems that were never made to be navigated by Black and brown people, that they just tap out of the resources.
Well, and even in places where someone well-meaning says, oh, we should get a whole bunch of vaccines into a neighborhood that is largely Black and brown people, there are still systemic barriers put in the way of the people in those neighborhoods accessing the vaccine. I mean, we can probably find a link for the story in New York. The New York State vaccine rollout has been a nightmare in New York State. And someone said, oh, we should get a bunch of vaccines to West Harlem, which is a largely Black and Hispanic Latino neighborhood, and has been disproportionately hit by COVID. We should get a bunch of vaccines there. Oh, look, there's a hospital there. Let's have New York Presbyterian Columbia Medical Center run a vaccine clinic in West Harlem. So they gave New York Presbyterian Columbia Medical Center X thousand doses of vaccine and said, distribute them to the neighborhood. And what they did was they distributed them to New York Presbyterian Columbia Medical Center patients who were not the people in the neighborhood. So I live 40 miles north of there, and I had folks here going, oh, look, I got an appointment for the Armory in West Harlem. I'm going to go down and get my vaccination from there. And, people are getting vaccines, and I celebrate that, and I celebrate people's ability to get them, but they didn't have a sense like, though, these vaccines are not meant for me. Because New York Presbyterian Columbia Medical Center didn't say, no, these vaccines are only meant for the people in this neighborhood. They're not meant. And it's, so someone was well-meaning. They said, yes, we should get lots of vaccines to this particular neighborhood. And there are still systemic barriers that prevent the people in that neighborhood from getting those shots. People in my town here in Peekskill are all a Twitter the governor announced that there would be a pop-up vaccine clinic in Peekskill. And Peekskill is about 2/3 people of color, the population in Peekskill, and the white folks on Facebook are all going like, "Oh my God, I can't get an appointment." Well, the vaccines that are being sent to Peekskill are being reserved for communities of color in Peekskill, and people are like, "What? How can we do that? What like?"
But
Thankfully,
nobody
someone
says, well,
actually
how can we
finally
give
did
white
that.
people?
Thank
Yeah,
you, right? Like,
nobody says, why can all the white people get the vaccine first? The question becomes, why do brown people get the vaccine at all? Sorry.
exactly. No, you're exactly. And the white folks are all like, "Oh God, I can't get an appointment." Like, well, it's not meant for you. You were not meant to get an appointment. Like, wait your turn.
Right, because if you look at the graphic of who is dying from COVID, it's Black and brown people who are dying from COVID. So if you vaccinate according to the list of people who are dying from it, you're already prioritizing those communities, right? And to your point, Michael, you're prioritizing them. If you're smart, you're prioritizing in a way that they can actually access. So you're sending in folks who speak the language, who have a cultural competency around what it means to get a shot, right? What it means to get a shot from the government, what has historically a shot from the government meant to that community, what giving you a little card that you're supposed to carry around and get signed, and then you have to bring that card back to get your second shot. What does that mean to a community that's been used to being asked for its papers, its immigration papers and immigration status? What does
Say that
feel
again?
like?
Say it again, Chris. What does it mean to say it again?
What does it feel like to have to be issued a card to get the vaccine in an immigrant community who's continually being asked for their papers and whether or not they're legal? What does it mean to just say to somebody, here, you need this card and you need to bring it back if you're going to have your shot?
And to have to show like 4 forms of ID in order for someone to write your name on that card. Because I'm sure that everyone I know who's been vaccinated has had to show driver's licenses and passports and employee IDs and proof of residency in a particular place, electric bills. Like, what does it mean to ask people to have to show all that?
Exactly.
I've been thinking about that and I hadn't articulated it at all, Chris. So I thank you for bringing that up, that we come from a history, Black and brown folks, of being medical guinea pigs, for lack of a better word. I don't like guinea pig, but I just can't find the other word. And to ask people for their papers, I just kept thinking, are these my freedom papers? Are these the papers that mean I can go sit down in a restaurant instead of picking up my food outside? Are these my papers, my freedom papers? And how do I move around if I don't have that shot paper yet? So I thank you, I guess. I don't want to be negative. I want to thank you for calling into this conversation the fact that some of us carry in our marrow a connection to having to prove who we are on a marrow-based level, that it is really, it changes how you view a vaccination. It changes how you view police. It changes how you view your freedom. When it hinges upon someone on the other side of the counter being a nice white lady.
That's
when
right.
Your ability to get your needs met is hinged upon a person believing you matter,
That's
you
right.
have value in the world.
Yep. Because how you treat somebody when you've done something wrong or when an error has been made in something that is, this wasn't like, when you go to the grocery store and it's supposed to be 2 for $1 and there's only one of something and you take it up and they say, oh, we'll give you a little ticket so you can get the deal later on. It's not that. This is life and death, right? This is me being out and doing my vocation. I'm out with COVID patients. I'm ministering to people in the Black and brown communities who are burying their families from COVID and want pastoral care. And those are the spaces I'm moving in. And I do it because they need it, but it puts all of our lives at risk. And to have somebody not even acknowledge that, yeah, a mistake was made. Here's how we're going to make, I mean, it's the basic part of when you make a mistake, you try and make the person whole.
And they didn't even give you a rain check for your second pint of raspberries. This wasn't like a, here's a little slip of paper. If you come back on Tuesday and we'll have a vaccine for you, like, we're sorry we're out right now or whatever. It was a, like, sorry, sucks to be you, and we're going to call security to get you out of our building.
Yep.
Our public healthcare facility building.
Yep.
Like, it wasn't even, here's your rain check, can you come back on Tuesday? Because you would have said, okay, I'll come back on Tuesday.
Sure. Absolutely. Go ahead, QuianaDenae.
So one of the things I was able to find as we were having our pre-conversation check-in is, so I live in Ann Arbor, and one of the more popular or famous hospitals is the University of Michigan Hospital, and they have a children's wing or, adolescent wing, and it's called Mott. And Tanner, if you want to put this stat up, it just blew my mind. So this survey is new. It's from 2020, so it's not like it's eons old, and it's looking at what the top 10 health concerns for different communities. And among Black folks, the top 3, just for folks who are listening along, among Black parents, the number 1 health concern of 2020 at 82% was racism. COVID came in at number 2 at 73%, and overuse of media at 7%. Among Hispanic parents, overuse of social media was 73%, cyberbullying was 72%, and internet safety was 72%. COVID is number 8 on that list. Among white parents, the top three, overuse of social media is 72%, bullying is 58%, internet safety is 57%, and COVID did not come up at all. I'm going to leave this here just so folks who are watching us can just kind of take this in, and it's, I can give you the link to Mott, all of those things. So it's, a reputable survey from a reputable, college community, if that's something that gets your pants all hot and bothered. You can go ahead, Tanner, and take it down. But the fact that it didn't even come up for white parents as a top 10 concern says to me that they either think that there is something in their world that says, I don't need to be attached to this thing that is a global pandemic, that my concern for my children can be detached from that. And for Black families, it's number 3. Racism being number 2.
QuianaDenae, I'm looking at those numbers, and I have a science background, right? So I look at numbers, and I can't help but also notice that the top 10 concerns for Black parents, even the 10th one was 60-something% of parents were concerned about their children's health in this way. And the same thing for Latino parents. The top 10 were all over 60%. Number 2 on the white parents list was 58%. And so, we have to also talk about what it means for people to be asked to carry that sort of stress and worry about their children's health.
Mm-hmm.
that Black parents and Latino parents are forced to carry that stress, to worry about their children's health in a fundamentally different way.
Yep.
Than white parents. That's what those numbers say to me.
Yep.
Just looking at it cursorily.
And I agree with you that there is a different amount of attention and time that is spent, because if I can't give you structures that are going to support you, I have to give you something. I have to give you a healthy body. I have to give you a healthy home, because I can't run out and change systemic racism, right? So the trade-off is I'm going to make you the best human I can possibly make you.
Well, and good parents want to protect their children.
Mm-hmm.
And white parents know their children will be protected by the
That's
society that is set up to protect them.
Yep. So I think one of the questions, I got asked a lot in the past couple of days from well-meaning folks is, what can I do? And, I've directed I've directed some folks to what they can do. And a couple of folks have come back and said, oh, that's kind of hard. Is there something else? So my answer is no, there isn't. My answer is you all need to be two things: out in your communities, pressuring the local, getting a group of you three. You could take three white women, get 3 white women together and pressure your local Department of Health about how they are going to be rolling out vaccinations to underserved communities. Because I guarantee you that they're going to talk to you before they talk to me. So try that first. And at the same time, what are your already existing relationships with underserved communities in your neighborhood, in your area? Because you should be reaching out to them and saying, how can we serve you in getting these vaccines rolled out in a way that meets your cultural competency needs? We don't need a bunch of white people coming in with the answers, right? Let me say that again. We don't need a bunch of white people coming in with what they think are the answers. We need your help supporting the people in their communities who know the best way to go about doing this, and then doing it, and then using your social capital to make it happen. Because one of the things that I recognized after I left is I went in there doing one of the things that I almost always advocate to people in my communities that they don't do. I went in there alone and without knowing anybody in that system, because it was a hospital that's further away, and I actually don't know anybody in that system. So I always recommend to, folks in our communities, Black and brown communities, you go with somebody else, and you go with, a name or a number, or, who knows who in what system, in order to navigate that system. Because as QuianaDenae said, we can't wait for the structural inequalities to go away before we get ours. Like, we have to deal with that structural inequality in the way it is. Should we have to take somebody with us? If I had taken my white husband, my 6'1" white husband with me, I can guarantee every person listening to this with my voice, I would have gotten that vaccine. I can guarantee it. Because he lost his mind when I got home and told him this whole story. But if he had been there at that moment, there is no way I was walking out of there without my vaccine. So use that social capital to make sure that is happening for other people while we work on dismantling those systems of oppression, right? We can do more than one thing. We can chew gum and walk and roll at the same time.
We can be poly. We can be poly in our attempts at liberation.
That's right. Yeah, we can do it all. So, is that difficult? Is it difficult if you haven't already built and established those relationships? Sure. Would it feel much better for you to just go and set up your own vaccine clinic and, take it to wherever it is that you think you should take it? Maybe. But that's not the ask. The ask is that you support Black and brown and Indigenous people in getting what they need in a way that makes it so that they can actually access that need.
The other thing that I want to add to that, Chris, is what most people, I didn't know until I talked to a friend of mine who's a researcher. There's continuing research for vaccines that don't need the immense amount of energy because those vaccines will also more easily, more accessibly serve underserved folks. There's still, they being researchers are still working on vaccines that don't need to be refrigerated, or at least refrigerated in a regular refrigerator, not the sub-zero temperatures that the current 2 vaccines need. Both Moderna and Pfizer need them. So support those too. Like, support, and we're not done. We need all these
also one-dose vaccines.
And one-dose vaccines.
Means you don't have to have a card and prove your worth to come back and
exactly
brave the system a second time to get your second shot. But all of us, Chris, can call our local departments of health and ask what they're doing. Like, we don't even need a group of 3 white women. Like, I can get on the phone and call the Westchester Department of Health and say, hey, I'm wondering what you're doing to get vaccines out to the communities that need them the most, and how you're prioritizing Black and brown people in our county in your vaccine rollout.
Yeah, because just by asking the question, by multiple people asking the question in your local communities, that's gonna help percolate that need in, this person at the Department of Health sitting there answering the phone, and 5 people call in saying, hey, what are you doing? They're going to get tired of answering the phone and not having an answer to that question. And so they're going to kick it to a next level of somebody who's also going to get tired of having to answer that question. And, slowly it's going to get done. But if we don't have people doing that, the system is just going to continue to protect who it was designed to protect. And it was not designed to protect Black and brown and Indigenous people. It just wasn't.
Whew.
That's what we have for you today, my friends. QuianaDenae, you look like you wanted to say something.
I do and I don't. I don't want to say anything. I had to think about it. I had to think. Sorry, I was just where I'm at is when I leave this conversation, I want to have my heart lightened a little bit. Like my heart feels really heavy right now. And I'm not saying I don't want to feel the discomfort, because I do. I mean, I'm okay with the discomfort that I have in my chest right now, but I am really thinking about how I move that energy, what spiritual practice, what emotional practice, what personal maintenance do I need to do to go from a place of feeling all of those things that come with being a Black, queer, fat, brown-bodied person who has had to access the medical community in the last few weeks, who has to access it on Monday. How do I move this energy around so that I can go do the things I have to go do next? Because if not, it consumes me. I'll be where you were, Chris, where it just is so that it feels so heavy around your neck. You don't want to move. You just want to, at least for me, I won't speak for you. I want to numb. I want to check out. I want silence. I want just to hear the clock tick and let time go by. And that's a place to be in. And I honor that place has to exist in my process, but my process also needs to include leaving that spot, moving to what is next, and moving to what's next, and moving to sitting in the chair with the back massager. So then I can move to go back to the grocery store and not feel like I'm going to get harmed. And so, you know what I mean? It's just, how do we move to what's next?
Yeah, I think the spiritual practice is super important. And it's one of the reasons why we do this work in community, is that we can experience the spiritual practice of supporting each other through this, of having, bearing witness, which is part of our responsibility, but then also supporting each other through that. And, I'm lucky that I've got a spiritual community within our spiritual community that reached out, this weekend. Lots of folks reached out and just, gentle touch, gentle, hey, we're here, that kind of thing. And I have a spiritual practice that put me in touch with my ancestors, that said, we are here, that through all of this, we have not just survived, but we have thrived. And those ancestors speaking through me and to me are the ways in which we survive and thrive. And what came before was what I'm trying to build for those that are going to come after. And so it's not even the responsibility part of that, like, oh, I've got to be responsible for the generations to come. To me, it's more the beauty of the gift that I get to give to those generations that come, because it's the gift that our ancestors have given to us. And once I can get to that place, then I know I'm going to be okay. Right. Mm-hmm. But you're right. Like, getting to that place takes a little bit.
Yeah. And the world doesn't pause, right? The world didn't stop because you had this moment. The world doesn't stop for any of us when those things happen. We're,
Nope. I still had to go officiate a funeral.
Yeah.
It just keeps going on.
it keeps going on, but I think some of what I'm glad we're talking about right now is sometimes I QuianaDenae, forget that we are a spiritual community. This work is so embedded that sometimes I have to call out that this is a spiritual practice. Calling out racism, white privilege, white supremacy culture is spiritual practice, and healing myself and using my tools, which primarily are spiritual because that's how I roll, to get better, to get to our next, is a part of who I am and how I'm going to move. So even though we as a UU culture aren't big on the big G word or even the big J word for some people, for that's how they move, we are still a spiritual community, and I cannot do this work in for me in isolation. This work is complex because I add faith, and it is compounded because I add faith, and it is healing because I add faith. And we can do all the political work we want in the world, and it matters, and I'm glad you do it, but know that faith component is where it changes. It changes for me, it changes in me, and it changes those around me.
Yes, amen. I direct people to Julka Herman de la Fuente did a beautiful Braver Wiser article this week called Holy Interruption, about what it means to make a spiritual practice of interrupting racism and interrupting oppression. So go and check it out. I will end us with her prayer. Querísima Diosa, help us strengthen our muscles to interrupt in love. Help us honor relationships and lived experience in real time, centering the needs of those that have been harmed and restoring what has been broken. Bendita seas. Amen. Thanks for joining us. We will see you again next week. We'll be here.
Thank you, friends.